One person asked, what do you think people who want to help misunderstand most about your situation and need?
I think the days right after, for me, when people would say, oh, everything's going to be fine. And it was when I personally was in the midst of like, oh my gosh, everything is upside down. I don't really know like how this is all going to turn out. So I didn't have that positive outlook that I usually do. And so when people would say like, oh, everything's going to be fine, I wanted to just look at them and say, how do you know everything's going to be fine? So that phrase actually for me was kind of like, especially the first like 10 to 15 days, coming from people who had no idea what I was going through, to have them say, oh, everything's going to be fine, to me was insulting at the time.
One piece of advice I would have for people is to offer specific ways that you might be able to help. A lot of people after a natural disaster will say, if there's anything I can do, please let me know. But there's so much that needs to be done, and so it can be overwhelming trying to figure out how well-intentioned person X is going to be able to plug into situation Y. That we found it much more helpful when either people just chose a way to help, like coming over with, a tray of food or bringing over some warm drinks, or just coming over and saying, hey, I'm here to work. What can I do to help out? Then people who, just kind of made vague offers as to, the fact that they were willing to help. And I think they were well-intentioned, and I think those people probably would have been, more than happy to actually help. But it was always easier when people found a way to help or asked specific questions. Hey, would it be helpful if, we took the kids to school for you today? Or is there anything for your kitchen that you could use? Or is there any food you're having a hard time getting? And those things, the more specific people were in their offers of help, the more we could take advantage of it and use that help.
Another listener was very curious to your thoughts on policies and laws. What do you hope will change to help keep people safe in your situation in the future with future storms? Or what laws and policies will help people in your situation to better recover from those storms?
It's really hard because as human beings, we've populated a lot of areas that shouldn't be populated. One only needs to look at a picture of Long Beach, Long Island that was taken in the 1920s to realize that it should have never been a thriving community of full-time homeowners. It's not a question of if the ocean at some point was going to reclaim Long Beach. It was a question of when. And so, that's a very difficult and delicate policy from a policy standpoint, because what you'd be talking about is taking areas where people live and putting them off limits. But I do think as new communities are developed, I think it's really important to look at how prone those communities would be to a natural disaster and to really discourage construction and development of areas that would be at high risk.
Yeah, I agree with Pete. I think that I heard a rumor, and I actually don't know what, if anything, ever became of it, but there was a rumor that the governor of New York was going to begin to buy, the state of New York was going to buy certain properties, for example, in a place like Staten Island, which had also had some extremely bad flooding, and they would return those properties to some sort of like wetlands to protect against hurricanes in the future. I honestly don't know whatever became of that, but I agree with Pete that it's such a difficult and delicate subject, but how much easier life would be if we just simply didn't build those houses in that area and left it to nature as it should be, and how much easier life would have been had nobody lived in Long Beach and nobody had to have their house flooded out. But it is very complicated as FEMA now comes in and has the regulation that you have to raise your house. And if you don't raise your house, then you can't get flood insurance. So there are policies being put in place, but they're expensive policies too for people that live there. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that because it's very delicate.
Are those regulations put in with some sort of financial support, or is that all on the homeowner to cover the cost for it?
There are programs that help cover the cost. They don't cover everything, but there were programs developed that made that kind of renovation possible for people who might not have otherwise had the financial means to do what they needed to do to be in compliance with the regulations.
I know for a lot of us, when we see on the news these stories of storms, it's all very negative, and there's a lot of bad that comes out of that. Obviously, a lot of devastation and trauma and those sorts of things. Did you see any blessings that came out of the storm, or blessings that came out for your family?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it really brought neighbors together, people who were, people you half-heartedly waved and said hello to. You ended up building really strong relationships with, having shared this common experience. People would just show up spontaneously to help if it was clear you were doing something and you needed more people to carry something heavy or bring a piece of equipment into the house. People would just show up. And I think just the generosity of the people who, as we described before, walked through our neighborhood, bringing hot meals, bringing hot coffee, bringing blankets, and all the other things that made life a little bit easier was really a blessing. And then for me, and I think for Melissa as well, realizing how much more we had than what we actually needed. It sounds tough to live in the upstairs of a house with, in 3 really tiny rooms and a bathroom. But once we got used to it, we were as happy as we had ever been. And sure, we had less stuff and less distractions, but I think we were surprised at how much life went on, even in a kind of bizarre environment compared to how we had lived before.
Yeah, and I think a positive lesson that I learned from the experience and sort of a blessing was to kind of take things as they come and be okay with how things are in the moment. I'm a planner. I like to organize things in advance, things like that. And I think the hurricane really pushed me to realize that things are not going to always fit the way that I want them to fit, and I don't have the control, and I can let go of that and be more flexible and take things as they come, one thing at a time, because I just simply couldn't solve all the problems that happened to our house right away in one moment. Things had to reveal themselves in order for us to figure out, like, what do we want to do with this house? What is our plan? We didn't know all at once. We had to go step by step and kind of rip out the carpet and say, oh, we need to redo the wires. All right. And everything just sort of happened step by step. So I think I personally learned that. And I think just to echo what Pete said about I think that I got a chance to see the goodness in people that I always knew was there, but it was really evident those days when we were mucking out the house, about the goodness of people and how people truly did want to help, and they did. And the simple things like a hot meal really did mean a lot, and it taught me a lot about being able to accept other people's help, because I've always been used to being the one who's involved in helping other people, that I actually had to realize that I needed to accept help from others, and people were there to offer that help. So that was a huge blessing for me. And it also gave me a lot of empathy when, not that I was ever harsh, like, oh, those people went through a hurricane or a tsunami, like, oh, okay, moving right on. But I think I'm able to, when I hear that someone has experienced a natural disaster, I feel like from my own experience, I can offer a listening ear and be able to understand a little bit more about what they might be going through, because I've gone through it too.
You've mentioned a lot of great things that people did to help. Most of them were people who were in your area or were close by. The most common question from all of listeners that sent in questions was, how can I help, or how do I help? And most of those were from people who were not in the areas where the hurricanes happened. So what advice would you have for those folks, especially people who maybe don't have a family member in that area, so there's not a direct tie that they have, but they still want to do something to help?
I think I recently with Hurricane Harvey in Houston, I think finding a connection of an organization or a community group or a church, if you can find a group that you trust, that you know will get into the hands of the people that will help, that is a wonderful way to help. Is, people had gathered money and bought us gift cards for Home Depot. And so all of those things really do help. And for people who are further away, it was an opportunity for us to receive, and cash. Cash is always helpful. So if people who are far away can find an organization that they trust to give money or goods to, we found that those goods reached us. We definitely received a lot of those things.
I would also warn people to beware of some of the big name relief organizations that tend to take advantage of the publicity generated by these disasters to go into fundraising mode. But our experience is that most of the aid and help and assistance that reached us and our neighbors was from smaller organizations or individuals who were looking to help out more than the Red Crosses of the world.
Red Cross came by, I think maybe once, and gave us like a cleaning supply, literally bucket, broom, and a blanket. And that was it. There wasn't much going on. I did see a group called Samaritan's Purse, which I think is like an evangelical kind of disaster relief, and they were everywhere. They had a trailer, and I had heard neighbors that they came in and treated the houses with bleach for free, volunteers, so there were some groups that that were smaller church that really did a lot of good things for people in the community, and not so much the Red Crosses of the world.
Since you've been through this experience, if you had a message to share with those who are just now experiencing it or who may experience it in the future, what would you want to say to those folks struggling through a situation, having lost their homes or belongings to a hurricane or natural disaster?
I would say you just have to take it day by day and wake up and do what you need to do today, and tomorrow will present a whole nother set of challenges and opportunities that you'll be ready to deal with tomorrow. But don't try to look too far into the future, because the future is especially in situations like this, it's very hazy and undefined. And so if you can find the personal resources to wait, clear answers will present themselves, but it's going to take some patience, because those clear answers will be frustratingly elusive if you try to find them before it's time.
Yes, I agree. Very well said. The only other thing that I would add is sort of dig deep and be stronger than you think you are, because you might want to just sort of wither away and just give up because there's just too much on that list. There's too many challenges, but know that you can get through it. You will get through it, and you'll learn a lot along the way, and there will be challenges and there will be ups and downs, but be stronger than you think you are in the moment.
Those are such great words. The last question that I have, and then I'll wrap up and let you guys get on with your lives. The name of the podcast is Wish You Knew. So what would be 3 things that you wish we knew, we being those of us who have